Revealed, disguised Billionaire'S card declined until the inspiring Maid did the unexpected. Jake had it all. The cars, the mansions, and more money than he could ever spend. But deep down, he was tired of the relentless pressure that came with being a billionaire. Today, he traded his tailored suits for a worn-out hoodie and jeans, seeking solace in a quaint suburban town. He walked into Rosie's diner, a place where the food was more comforting than the ambience. The worn tables and checkered floors felt like home. As he slid into a booth, guilt crept in. He longed for the family values he had abandoned, values that felt as distant as his childhood memories. Across the diner, Maria juggled her multiple jobs and her siblings' needs. In her late 20s, she wore scuffed shoes, but her spirit shone with tenacity. As she took orders, she couldn't help but notice Jake. He looked like just another diner, but when his card was declined, whispers flew around the room. Maria felt a pang of empathy. She knew struggle. Judgmental glances evaporated the diner's cozy vibe, revealing a painful divide that pierced through the laughter and clinking dishes. "Here," she said, mustering warmth as she approached his table, a plate of homemade meatloaf in her hands. "I made extra." The kindness in her voice contrasted sharply with the icy stares of others, reminding her of her mother's teachings. Compassion was paramount in a world tangled in jealousy. Jake looked up, surprised by her gesture, as if someone finally saw him for who he was, not what he owned. Over the meatloaf, they began to share their dreams. Maria spoke of helping her community rise above the constraints of poverty, her voice vibrant with determination. Each word resonated within Jake, plucking the strings of a long-forgotten hope. Just when their conversation seemed to transform into something magical, a voice, a customer at the counter, broke the moment. "Hey, isn't that Jake Lawson?" Suddenly, Jake's billionaire status was flung into the air like a bomb. The warmth in the diner turned to ice. Regulars squirmed in discomfort, now viewing him through a lens of suspicion. The kindness from Maria hung in the balance. She was faced with a choice: defend her new friend or bow to the crowd's disdain. Her stomach knotted as she stood up, heart racing. Isn't it a greater shame to judge a person for what they have rather than who they are? She called out, her voice steady but trembling with urgency. "Michael Jordan doesn't lose his worth just because he has money." As the chatter fizzled into tension, her words ignited a flicker of understanding. People began to reassess, grappling with their own biases and life choices. Even Jake held his breath, struck by her courage. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The diner felt like a battlefield, hearts and values under scrutiny. Would humanity step forward, united against the tide of judgments? In that moment of awakening, Maria's spirit clashed with society's fabric, leaving Jake to ponder. Could this budding friendship bridge the chasm between fortune and empathy? The tension hung thick in the air, and the future seemed uncertain as the murmurs rolled on, waiting for a resolution that could change everything. Jake's heart raced as he caught the gazes of the other diners, flickering between curiosity and resentment. Maria's brave stand pushed against the carries of his shame, igniting just a spark of admiration in him. "Why did she have to defend me?" he thought. The powerful rush of conflicting emotions swirled within him, the urge to flee battling with a newfound longing to stay and connect. The silence crept in like fog, thick and stifling. Then one by one, a few heads began to nod, hesitant at first but slowly gaining momentum. It was as if Maria's words pierced through the tension, awakening dormant voices in a room full of doubt. A grandmotherly figure with silver hair leaned forward. "She's right," she said softly. "Money doesn't define a person. It's what's inside that counts." Jake's breath caught, a warmth seeped into the chilling atmosphere. In that moment, he recognized a fragile yet powerful thread knitting their stories together: the common struggle of humanity, the shared desire for acceptance. Whether it came from a mansion or a diner booth, Maria took a step back, her spirit unyielding but vulnerable. Her eyes searched for reassurance among the diners. "We all face battles," she continued, "and it shouldn't matter where we come from. It's how we choose to lift each other up that counts." Her voice rose like a beacon, reaching for hearts once closed off in skepticism. As the murmurs shifted, Jake felt the walls he had built around his life begin to dissolve. The diner transformed not just into a haven of warm meals, but into a sanctuary of shared honesty. For the first time in years, he felt seen not as Jake Lawson, the billionaire, but just Jake, a man yearning for connection. "Thank you," he finally managed to say to Maria, his voice steadier now. Her face broke into a soft smile, relief washing over her features. "It's what we're supposed to do, I assent it," she replied simply, a light returning to her eyes. But as Jake prepared to dig deeper into this moment of understanding, the swing door of the diner creaked open, and in strode a familiar figure he and T expected to see here. His childhood friend, Matt, a name that echoed with lost memories and long-forgotten times. Matt's eyes filled with disbelief as they scanned the room, landing directly on Jake, who felt instantly exposed, fighting the urge to hide. "What in the world are you doing here?" Matt exclaimed, laughter laced with surprise. The tension thickened again, now colored with confusion, as the other diners turned to each other, wondering what this new development would bring. Jake felt the ground beneath him shift once more, the pressure of his past rushing back to drown the hope that Maria had awakened in him. In that moment, everything hung in the balance. Would Matt confront him about the life he had chosen to escape from? Or could this unexpected reunion turn into an opportunity to rekindle a bond long buried under wealth and ambition? Jake's heart raced again, not just from fear, but from the surge of possibilities that surrounded him. Can he handle the truth? He whispered to himself, the weight of choice pressing down heavily. The diner's atmosphere felt charged, a tangle of stories waiting to unfold, a narrative of two worlds colliding in unexpected ways. Would Jake dare to let the warmth of this new friendship replace the cold loneliness he had carried for so long? The boundaries of their worlds might be shifting, but the ultimate question remained. Would they bridge the gaps or let old assumptions tear them apart again? Jake's stomach twisted as he absorbed the weight of Matt's surprised expression. Memories flooded back, laughter shared, childhood dreams, and the recklessness of youth in a world where money was just a fading afterthought. But here they were, divided by years of Jake's choices and decisions that had led him astray. "Jake," Matt called again, his laughter now a mix of confusion and disbelief. It was like a light on a darkened path. "You look different. What happened to you?" The diners shifted uncomfortably in their seats, drifting between intrigue and judgment. Jake could feel their eyes darting back and forth, echoing the tension in his chest. This was not how he'd imagined reuniting with his old friend in a diner of all places, under the weight of so many assumptions and misunderstandings. I just needed a change," Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite the upheaval shaking his insides. He hardly recognized himself, wrapped up in a life that felt increasingly hollow. Struggling to express the whirlwind of emotions within him, he glanced at Maria, who stood nearby, her presence a gentle encouragement. Matt's laughter faded, replaced by concern. "Change. This doesn't feel like a vacation, man. Are you all right?" It was a genuine question, not laden with the judgment Jake had feared. For a moment, the world seemed to quiet down, leaving them in a bubble where their history could breathe. Jake paused, his thoughts racing. Should he unearth the truth? Should he explain the reasons behind his retreat from wealth, the pain of suffocating expectations? His voice faltered, but Matt wasn't going to let him hide. "Just tell me, Jake. No judgment here." There it was, the lifeline, the camaraderie that had always felt safe, distant yet ever present. Jake inhaled deeply, collecting himself. "I needed to escape all the expectations. The life I was living became so empty, and I thought maybe I could reconnect with who I really am," he said, the words tumbling out like secrets he'd kept locked away. The room bristled with whispered conversations, eyes wide with curiosity. A few people leaned in, their attention riveted on the two friends, as if they were witnessing a rendezvous straight out of a movie. Matt studied him closely, searching for deeper truths underneath Jake's carefully curated facade. "Is that why you've been hiding? Because of the money?" The lifestyle? Jake nodded slowly, a sense of liberation washing over him. I just wanted peace, a break from it all. But it's hard to know what's real sometimes. I'm tired of pretense. Silence wrapped around them. Then Matt spoke thoughtfully. I get it. We all want to feel like we matter. A beat, then insight struck his expression. So what's next for you, man? Are you planning to stay in this life? Or do you have somewhere else to go? Jake looked around the diner, now feeling a sense of belonging. Maria's words echoed in his mind, lifting each other up mattered. Maybe he could rewrite his story here. I don't know yet, but I think I want to be part of something real, something meaningful. Matt nodded, a hint of a smile breaking through. That's what they say, isn't it? The heart always knows the way. As Jake began to let the concept of a new life settle in, an unexpected weight shifted off his shoulders. The door swung open once again, drawing attention. This time, another familiar face stepped in, one from his corporate past that brought with it a wave of anxiety he couldn't shake. The chill of recognition swept through him as he locked eyes with the newcomer. Did this mean trouble? Would the walls he'd been trying to dismantle come crashing down around him once more? Jake's heartbeat quickened anew, anticipating what was about to unfold. Would he have the strength to stand and face his past? Or would everything he had started to rebuild here come crumbling down? Jake's mind whirred as the familiar figure stepped further into the diner, the bell above the door jingling almost mockingly. Grant, a former colleague, exuded an aura of confidence that Jake had once envied. The suit he wore was sharp, tailored, a stark reminder of the world he had chosen to escape. He stood there, scanning the diner with an air of superiority before his gaze locked onto Jake, the flicker of surprise quickly replaced by an anticipatory smirk. Jake Edison, Grant called out, striding over with a sense of entitlement. I didn't expect to see you here, out in the wild like this. Hard to believe you traded in your corner office for what? A diner mug? Jake felt heat creep up his neck, the small group around him still engrossed in their own conversations, but now acutely aware of the spotlight shifting toward him. He could almost feel the predatory thrill radiating from Grant, like a wolf smelling weakness. Glad to see you've made it, Jake replied, voice steadier than he felt, holding on to his composure like a fragile lifeline. What happened, man? You were on track to become one of the big hitters, Grant continued, feigning concern that straight up dripped with mockery. And now look, are you here for a slice of humble pie? Jake clenched his fists, ready to throw all the pent-up frustration back at Grant. He sought the shelter of Matt's reassuring presence beside him, who shot a warning glance at the incoming storm. Before Jake could respond, Maria stepped forward, her expression determined. Jake's living his truth, doing what he feels is right, she stated firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. Not everyone needs to follow the same path. Grant raised an eyebrow, taken aback momentarily before laughter erupted from his lips. Oh, that's rich. The millionaire running off to find himself in a diner, while we're over here making deals that actually matter. You think this is real life? It stung, but Jake was tired of pretending. Maybe it is real life, Grant. You wouldn't know anything about that, he replied, his anger breaking free. Money doesn't define who people are or what they're worth. The room became charged, all eyes now on the unfolding drama. For a split second, time seemed to pause, a collective breath held in unison. Jake felt weight lift with every word. Clarity began to shine through the fog of insecurity. Wow, have you finally learned to talk back? Grant smirked, but there was less bravado behind his posture now, an unease creeping in. What's next? A moment of reflection to write in your diary? Jake turned to Matt, who was watching intently, a proud grin on his face. Actually, yeah, it is about reflection. Owning your choices. It's a lot more meaningful than chain restaurants and board meetings. The weight of the moment hung in the air, and Jake could tell this wasn't the peel back of a simple friendship. This was a reckoning. People grew increasingly curious, with whispers circulating as they observed the unraveling of Jake's past. Let us see how long this finding oneself lasts when reality hits, Grant spat, taking a step back, but the air had shifted. Jake could feel it. The tension melted just enough to see possibilities shimmer around the edges of pain. Reality's already hitting, Jake replied, his voice calm but firm, proud of the stance he had taken. The onlookers began to murmur, exchanging glances that conveyed sympathy, admiration, perhaps even hope. Then, in an unexpected twist, a voice from the back called out, "What's wrong with living a simple life? You might have money, but that doesn't grant you respect." A ripple went through the crowd, and it became clear that Jake wasn't alone in this fight. As Grant turned to retaliate, Jake's heart raced. Would the past fully bubble to the surface, or could he continue this newfound journey without the suffocating weight of expectations? Just then, Maria stepped up beside Jake, her unwavering gaze a beacon of strength. "Let us see how real this moment can get," she whispered, bringing a smile to Jake's face. But just as the tide turned, the door swung open once more. A woman entered, her presence commanding, and Jake felt a pang of recognition that set his heart racing once again. Who was she, and what would her arrival mean for his uncertain path ahead? Jake's heart pounded as the woman stepped into the diner, her silhouette cutting through the dim light like a beacon. She navigated the tables effortlessly, each move confident and poised. But it wasn't just her presence that sent his mind spinning, it was her face, one he'd seen years ago, forever etched in his memory. Ava, his first love. She hadn't changed much, and yet everything about her felt completely different. That familiar laugh danced on the edge of his mind, but now it was winding itself up with confusion and unease. The din of the diner faded into a muted hum as she approached. "Ava," he managed, more a breath than a question. Just the sound of her name felt like a jolt of electricity. Her deep brown eyes met his, and he saw the flicker of recognition there, quickly masked by something unreadable. "Jake Edison," she replied, a soft smile pulling at her lips, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I wasn't expecting to find you here." The tension shifted around them, sparking a new dynamic that had the gathered crowd momentarily forgotten. Ava was a whirlwind, drawing attention effortlessly. The whispers started again, but this time they were filled with intrigue. People leaned in closer, eager to catch a glimpse of this unexpected encounter. Grant's smug grin faltered as he watched the reunion unfold. "Is this your saving grace, Jake?" he sneered, stepping back into the fray. "Reconnecting with old flames while shielding yourself in mediocrity?" Jake fought to keep his focus on Ava, the connection between them undeniable. "I'm not afraid of who I am now," he countered, revealing a spark of defiance. "And living a simple life doesn't mean I'm not successful." Ava's gaze shifted between Jake and Grant, her brow furrowing. "What is going on here?" she asked the room at large, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. It wasn't just a question, it was a challenge. "Just a little reunion of sorts," Jake replied, feeling warmth build in his chest. Her presence ignited a protective fire inside him, but he could sense the stakes had raised even higher. Everything around him hinged on this moment, fragile and thrilling. While the whispers grew louder, the atmosphere thick with anticipation, Maria's arm brushed against Jake's. "You've got this," she whispered, her encouragement a lifeline. The moment felt electric, alive with possibility. Grant scoffed, his bravado wilting. "Reunions don't change the past, Jake," he chimed, but there was something desperate in his tone. "It doesn't take back what you've lost." Jake straightened, his heart steady with conviction. "You're right about one thing, Grant. The past is just that, a stepping stone, not a weight to carry. And if I can learn to transform that pain into strength, so can Ava." Taking a step towards Ava, he felt renewed vigor. "So how have you been?" "Really?" For a brief moment, the din of the diner faded completely. Time seemed suspended, every eye locked onto them, waiting for the unraveling of their shared story, a tale of lost opportunities and unspoken words. Ava hesitated, vulnerability flickering across her face before she gathered her thoughts. "Life has changed a lot," she started, her voice a mix of uncertainty and resolve. "I came here looking for something different, something real. And it seems I've found a little of that already." Before Jake could respond, a sudden crash echoed through the diner as Grant knocked over a chair in frustration. "You can't play house in a diner, Jake. This is a fantasy." The crowd gasped collectively, tension rising even higher. "What if it's not a fantasy?" Ava shot back, her voice rising against Grant's skepticism. "What if this is exactly where we're meant to be?" Jake's breath quickened, a mixture of hope and fear coursing through him. Each beat of his heart pulsed the question louder in his mind. Could they rewrite their story together, even now? As the arguments escalated, The door burst open again this time, revealing a man with a wild look in his eyes. He strode in, seemingly oblivious to the charged atmosphere, and Jake's heart began to race once more. Who was this newcomer, and how would he shift everything again? The newcomer locked eyes with Jake for a split second, then scanned the room with a fierce intensity. He wore a tattered leather jacket, disheveled hair, and scuffed boots, but there was a surprising confidence in his stride, like he owned the place. Even if the place didn't look all that welcoming. The lively chatter of the diner faded as everyone shifted their focus to him. "Did I miss the party?" he asked, his voice booming, but it was laced with a rough charm that drew attention rather than scattering it. Jake felt his stomach churn. What could this guy want? In that moment of distraction, he noticed Ava's gaze falling to the stranger. Curiosity and concern etched into her expression. Grant stepped forward, glaring at the newcomer as if he were a threat. "Who even are you?" he demanded, his voice dripping with disdain. "Just a guy looking for a cup of coffee and some good company." The man shot back, flashing a grin that was disarmingly contagious. "Maybe some adventure, too. Heard this place was legendary." A murmur rippled through the diner, and even some of the onlookers seemed taken by his presence. Jake could hardly believe the atmosphere had shifted like that. Against all odds, this stranger was capturing attention in a way that felt both refreshing and alarming. "Legendary?" Jake scoffed, trying to reclaim the moment. "More like small-town hangout with questionable coffee." The man's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Small towns have their magic. There's heart here." He turned to Ava, his tone softening. "You could feel it in the air. Must be why you're here." Jake's heartbeat quickened, and a wave of protective instinct surged through him. He took a couple of steps closer to Ava, his own frustration flaring. "And who are you to speak about heart?" But Ava intervened, holding up a hand. "Wait, Jake." She turned to the newcomer, her voice steady. "What is your name?" "Eli," he replied with an easy smile. "Just a wanderer passing through." "Wanderer? Is that what you call it?" Grant sneered, stepping in closer as if to guard Ava from Eli's charm. "You're just another nobody clinging to fame that isn't yours." Eli shrugged, a faint smirk playing on his lips. Better a nobody with dreams than a somebody too afraid to lose what they never really had. His gaze fell on Jake. "Isn't that right?" In a flash, emotions bubbled in Jake's chest. This wasn't a fight. It was a test of resilience, one he had hoped to avoid. He turned to Ava, searching for her support, but he found that her expression was more encouraging than he'd expected. There was something awakening in her eyes, a spark of connection fueled by uncertainty. "Eli, do you even know what you've walked into?" Jake challenged, feeling the heat of the diner's atmosphere shift yet again. "You're stirring things up that don't need stirring." "Maybe what doesn't need stirring is precisely the problem," Eli replied, now looking at Jake with an intensity that made Jake's skin prickle. "Sometimes, people need a little push to reveal what's really buried beneath." Ava stepped forward, the tension of the moment now pulling her closer to the center of this unfolding drama. "Why are you here, Eli? What do you want?" "A chance to share a story," he replied simply, leaning on the edge of a nearby table. "Just like you two." A silence fell, heavy and thick. The air was charged with questions unasked, emotions left unsaid. Jake felt his heart racing. Was this the opportunity they needed to unearth their hidden truths? Before Jake could gather his thoughts, Eli opened his mouth to speak again. "What if the past isn't the only thing that defines you? What if there's a way forward, but only if you're brave enough to embrace it?" Jake glanced at Ava, her gaze unwavering, filled with a mixture of hope and fear. Could they really confront their past together? The clamor of the diner faded in the background, and all Jake could hear was the sound of his own heartbeat thumping loudly in his ears. He felt torn, trapped on an edge. A single question floated into the air, poised to change everything. What if the key to their future lay in the truths they had buried deep within? As the crowd held its breath, a deep silence enveloped them, broken only by the sound of clinking dishes in the background. It seemed impossible, but what if this night really could rewrite their stories? Jake felt as if the walls were closing in. Eli's presence was a wildfire, igniting old memories and stirring worries he thought he'd buried. The diner's atmosphere, once comfortable and familiar, now felt charged with potential and danger. Ava's eyes sparkled with something almost unrecognizable curiosity mingled with a flicker of hope. Eli, Jake said, trying to infuse authority into his voice. You don't know us. You don't know what we've been through. Exactly, Eli replied, leaning closer, his voice low enough for only Jake and Ava to hear. But I want to. We could all use a little honesty, don't you think? The words hung in the air between them, heavy and undeniable. The tables around them, the worn vinyl seats, and the greasy diner smell faded into the background as Jake grappled with his thoughts. Ava looked so alive in that moment, so ready to dive into whatever unknown awaited them. Jake felt both drawn to her desire for connection and shackled by his own fear. Jake, she said softly, maybe we do need this. Maybe this is our chance. He turned to her, searching her eyes. What if it hurts? What if we can't handle it? Then we handle it together, she replied, a challenge simmering in her tone. We've been running for too long. Eli crossed his arms, the confident ease in his posture encouraging while simultaneously unnerving. You'd be surprised how much can change when you confront the truth. I'm not here to judge, just to share a few stories if you're willing. He scanned the diner, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the tension building between Jake and Ava. The few patrons who had watched the scene unfold now seemed fixated solely on Eli, fascinated by the enigma he presented. You've got so much potential hidden in the shadows. Sometimes, stepping into the light can be the most terrifying yet liberating experience of all. The heat radiating from Jake surged through him. Who was this guy to come in and poke at buried pain? Was he ready for this? Tell us your story then, Jake challenged, crossing his arms in return. Let us see what wisdom you can offer from your wanderings. Eli laughed, the sound rich and genuine, breaking the tension that had woven itself tightly around them. Fair enough. Mine's a tale of failure and perseverance, just like everyone else's. It's about getting knocked down and choosing every time to get back up. Jake's heart raced. Was it foolishness to hope they could make sense of their past by listening to this stranger? But as he met Ava's gaze again, he could see a flicker of excitement shining through her uncertainty. Her belief had always been a balm that soothed the cracked edges of his heart. With a deep breath, Jake nodded, feeling the walls shift, if just a little. Okay, Eli, we're listening. The tension eased just a bit as Eli smiled broader, as if now finally given permission to dive into the depths of his tale. All right then. It started with a choice, one that needed courage more than anything else. As Eli unfolded his story, Jake became aware of the muted gasps and whispers echoing around the diner, the very essence of the diner's atmosphere shifting again, enveloping them like a cocoon. It felt like this was more than just an exchange, it was a beginning. But as the lights flickered and a sudden commotion broke out at the entrance, attention snapped away from Eli. A stranger dashed into the diner, breathless and wide-eyed, sending a ripple of unease through the crowd. What is happening? Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Was it more disturbance disrupting this fragile moment of connection? In that instant, the diner shifted from a stage for revelations back into chaos. The glimmer of hope they'd begun to grasp slipped away. The question loomed heavily in the air: what had they just opened themselves up to? And would they be interrupted before they could truly dive into their uncharted waters? The stranger, panting and disheveled, seemed to draw every pair of eyes in the diner to him. Diner chatter dimmed to a hush as Jake and Ava exchanged worried glances. Could the moment of connection they'd been building really be shattered just like that? Please, you have to help. The man called out, his voice shaky. They're coming for me. I don't know what else to do. Eli's expression shifted, the amusement melting off his face like sunlit ice. What do you mean? They're coming for you. Feds. He paused, glancing unpredictably at the door behind him, as if expecting agents to burst through at any second. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to help, and now they think I know something. I swear I don't. Jake felt the atmosphere grow heavy again, but not in the same way as moments before. A different kind of tension crackled in the air, laced with fear instead of anticipation. Eli's gaze never left the stranger, his curiosity mixed with genuine concern. Ava leaned in closer to Jake. Do you think he is telling the truth? I don't know, he whispered back, his heart pounding. But what if this gets ugly? The diner was a world of contradictions. The warmth of hope they had been nurturing moments ago now felt distant and cold. The comforting clang of dishes and the aroma of greasy fries were overshadowed by the stranger's frantic energy. Patrons shifted uncomfortably, casting sidelong looks. Tension swirling as uncertainty hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. "Listen, man," Eli said sharply, leaning in, his authoritative voice breaking through the chatter. "Start from the beginning. What is happening?" The stranger swallowed hard, trembling under the weight of scrutiny. "I stumbled upon something I shouldn't have seen. But I can't reveal it if I do. I'm as good as dead." "What did you see?" Jake asked, his own curiosity ignited. The stranger glanced around the diner, hesitating. The weight of the secret hung around him, palpable. Slowly, he took a breath. "There's a plot of crime at the city hall. They're covering it up." His eyes darted again, as if a ghost were brushing against him. "I couldn't just let it go." Ava frowned. Worry etched on her features. Jake shifted uncomfortably, contemplating what this revelation could mean. It seemed the universe was not finished unveiling its mysteries. Eli took a step closer. "You can't be alone in this. Trust someone. Trust us." "You don't understand," the stranger blurted, panic evident in his trembling voice. "They're too powerful." They won't stop until suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back of the diner. The sound of a chair toppling over sent shockwaves of fear through the room, and heads turned abruptly in its direction. The stranger flinched, eyes wide as he recoiled, realization brimming in his expression. "What are we going to do?" Ava whispered to Jake, her voice shaky. I don't know," he stammered, glancing at Eli, who seemed unyielding, caught between anger and determination. The stranger was backing away, his eyes wild with fear. Jake could see in his face a desperate plea for help, a yearning for protection against the unseen danger that loomed close. The diner's lights flickered again, hinting at an impending blackout. Jake knew something had changed. They were standing on the brink of something far greater than their own struggles. Life was pulling them into a chaotic story, one they never sought but could not ignore. Could they risk everything to get involved? Just as Jake prepared to settle his thoughts, a group of figures entered briskly through the now opened door, their demeanor radiating urgency and authority. The moment of truth was crashing upon them, and Jake realized they could no longer be mere spectators. The tension in the air became unbearable. What path would they choose when faced with the unexpected? Would they step into this storm or retreat back into their old shadows? Anxiously gripping the table's edge, Jake wondered if this moment would usher in a spark of understanding or a wave of chaos that could change everything they had just begun to explore. The figures that rushed into the diner were pressed suits, sharp haircuts, and serious faces. An unshakable air of authority surrounded them, drawing gasps from patrons enjoying their meals. Jake's stomach twisted, a darkness settling in as their eyes scanned the room like hawks hunting prey. The stranger's face went pale, a shiver of recognition coursing through him. Jake exchanged a quick look with Ava and Eli, all three caught in a shared moment of disbelief. This wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was pulled into something bigger than himself. "Where is he?" One of the agents barked, the gravel in his voice cutting through the tension. The stranger backed away further, his breaths coming in a whispered rush. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, panic coating every word as the agents advanced. The diner held its breath, a freeze frame of shock and fear. Jake felt the weight of the moment pressing in on him. "Do I step in? Should we run?" A flood of questions filled his mind like a rising tide, but his body remained frozen. "Help us," Ava whispered fiercely, her eyes wide with urgency. "We can't just let them take him." Jake desperately searched for a solution, but time thickened as the agents closed in. Eli seemed to sense the shift too, his jaw tightening. "We have to do something," he muttered, a steely determination tinging his voice. Just then, as if the universe answered their unvoiced fears, the diner's lights flickered again, casting shadows that danced across the walls. One of the agents turned at the sound of a creaking chair. It was an ordinary mistake, but the tension was electric, and Jake could feel the world teetering on the edge of chaos. "Get out of here," Eli suddenly shouted, his voice booming through the disquiet. Everyone jolted. The agent, momentarily distracted, turned his head. The stranger took that split second to bolt for the exit, his legs finding life in the urgency. Jake's heart raced as he glanced at Ava. "We can't just leave him." But in that moment, survival instincts kicked in. Eli shot a glance at Jake. and without words, they both understood what they had to do. They wouldn't turn their backs on someone who had pleaded for help, but the odds of winning this fight were slim, and they had to be smart about it. "Get behind the counter," Jake yelled, grabbing Ava's hand and pulling her towards the kitchen, the adrenaline tingling in his veins. Eli fell in step, determination carving set lines across his face. They ducked out of sight as the agents rushed past them in pursuit, barking orders to search the diner. Jake felt the fear coiling in his stomach, but also something else, an ember of hope. They were about to plunge into something dangerous, but perhaps this could be a chance for them to uncover the truth. Maybe they could make a difference. "Look," Eli said, his voice low and urgent, "we can't let him go down without a fight. If this is bigger than what we think, we owe it to ourselves to find out." As they crouched behind the counter, Jake's mind reeled with thoughts of the City Hall plot. He could no longer pretend that the rest of his life was on pause. This was real. They had to seek answers, to face whatever storm lay ahead. Suddenly, the diner door burst open again, sending a hush through the space. The other patrons held their breath. Whoever had entered carried a weight that made the air feel thick. "Where is he?" The new figure's voice carried, low and ominous. Jake's heart raced. Would they walk into a trap? In this moment of uncertainty, he felt courage begin to swell inside him. It was time to stand for something. Could they truly challenge the chaos, or would they fall victim to it? As the shadows loomed closer, Jake felt a jolt of clarity. No turning back now. Would they summon the courage to rise against this hidden menace? Or would they succumb to the perilous tide threatening to wash over them all? Jake's heart hammered like a drum, echoing in the charged silence of the diner. He felt the weight of uncertainty pulling at him. But just beyond that weight was a flicker of hope, the kind that ignited when you decide to stand for something bigger than yourself. "Stay close," he whispered to Ava and Eli, determination etching every line on his face. Peeking around the counter, he could see the tension thickening, a foreboding presence looming over them as the figures searched the room, their authority unmistakable. It wasn't just a matter of saving the stranger. It felt like a moment that could redefine all of their fates. "Remember, we're not alone in this." Eli's voice steadied them, a balm against the storm stirring within. Jake nodded, grounding himself, and glanced once again at Ava. She was ready, fires lit in her eyes, a reflection of their shared resolve. The tension thudded through the air as they could hear the agents questioning patrons, their demands cracking like thunder. "You, there," one shouted, pointing at a wide-eyed customer who was clearly trembling. "Have you seen a man? A fugitive?" The panic coursed through the diner like a current, and Jake could sense people weighing their safety against the burden of complicity. In a heartbeat, a collective decision flooded the hearts of the onlookers. The diner patrons began to whisper among themselves, shifting from fear to solidarity. The grandmotherly figure Jake had noticed earlier stood up first, her voice shaky but resonant. "He was right here. You have to let him go." Surprised glances darted among the agents. "You don't understand," one of them replied, exasperation creeping into his tone. "This is a federal investigation. Stay out of it." But it was too late. The air had changed. Jake caught a glimpse of hope igniting in the faces of the diners around him. If they could find their courage, perhaps he and his friends could too. "Now's our chance," he whispered, adrenaline bubbling in his veins. "We need to find that stranger." Ava nodded, and Eli rallied beside them. Together, he reiterated quietly, and they had each other's backs as they crept toward the back exit. As they moved, the chatter in the diner swelled into support. "Isn't it worth considering that everyone deserves a second chance?" someone shouted from the crowd, emboldening their cause. Jake's heart swelled, gratitude washing over him. He no longer just felt like the billionaire hiding in the shadows of his wealth. He was part of something bigger, a community coming together in moment of truth. Duck low, the trio navigated toward the exit while the diners created a diversion, standing resolute against the agents who were now overwhelmed by the weight of the crowd. Jake held his breath as he slipped out the door, the sharp night air filling his lungs with purpose. As they emerged into the dimly lit street, Jake's eyes darted, scanning for the stranger. Where could he have gone? He murmured, anxiety creeping back into his chest. But just then, they heard a sniffly whimper coming from the alley behind the diner. "Over here," Ava called, urgency steering her steps. They rushed toward the sound, and there, huddled against the bricks, was the stranger, his face drawn and anxious. "They're after me," he said through trembling lips, fear leaching the color from his cheeks. "I don't know if they'll stop." "Then let us figure this out together," Jake said, a new conviction rising inside him. You haven't faced this alone, not anymore. The warmth of connection settled around them like a shield, and the stranger nodded, his trust beginning to bloom. Just as they steadied themselves for what lay ahead, the sounds of the diner erupted behind them, shouts and chaos filling the air. "They'll find me," the stranger fretted. "Not if we stick together," Eli asserted, stepping forward. "We're not backing down. This could be their downfall." Jake's heart pounded with each word, and in that heated moment, something transformative surged through him, a clarity that illuminated the path forward. Confronting uncertainty didn't mean running. It meant standing firm. Jake, Ava, and Eli formed a small circle, united in purpose, a fierce bond forged by shared risk. "From here on out," Jake proclaimed, with a fire blazing in his heart, "there's no going back. We'll help you expose the truth." As they stood resolute, emboldened by each other's strength, they felt the haze of fear begin to lift. Somewhere deep within, they all understood they were on the edge of a story that could rewrite all of their lives, defined not by wealth or circumstance, but by their courage and commitment. And with that unspoken agreement, they turned their gaze back toward the diner. A new dawn was breaking, not just for the stranger, but for all of them. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Jake took a deep breath, clarity washing over him like a wave. They weren't just individuals chasing shadows. They were a collective ready to confront the darkness. The diner stood as a beacon behind them, a reminder of transformation and resolve. He took the first step toward it, Ava and Eli flanking him. This was real life, the heart of their journey ringing louder than any judgment or pretense. Together, they would face whatever came next. And as they stepped back into the fray, Jake realized that sometimes all it took was a leap of faith, a stand against the oncoming storm, and above all, finding your voice. This isn't just the end. This is just the beginning of a new chapter. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and feelings about this transformative journey. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this change. This is the moment to rally behind your community and echo these shared narratives of hope and courage.